Imagine walking through a temple where gold was not decoration. It was the atmosphere. The walls shimmered like fire. The air carried the weight of sacrifice, royalty, and secrets, too heavy for ordinary men to hold on. And at the center of it all stood Solomon, the king God called the wisest man on earth. But here is the question no one can ignore. How did one man rule a kingdom of unimaginable wealth, build a temple that stunned the ancient world, and hold the loyalty of 1,000 women without conquering them by war? These women were not just wives. Many of them were living treaties, human bridges between Israel and foreign thrones. Every marriage carried political power. Every alliance added another layer to Solomon's empire. Yet behind the golden walls, something darker was forming. The very wisdom that raised him above all kings slowly became the doorway to his downfall. Have you ever seen someone gain everything the world calls success, only to lose the one thing heaven values most? If this story already feels deeper than wealth and romance, comment Solomon below. Because what happened inside his kingdom still speaks to our world today. This is not just the story of a temple, it is the story of a man who had gold, glory, women, wisdom, and legends surrounding a mysterious ring said to command the unseen realm. But one question remains. What finally broke the greatest kingdom Israel would ever know? To understand Solomon's fall, we must first step inside the place where his glory reached its highest point, the golden heart of Jerusalem, Solomon's temple. Inside Solomon's temple, how the wisest king managed 1,000 wives. Before there was gold on the walls, before the temple rose over Jerusalem, before 1,000 women entered Solomon's world, there was one night at Gibeon that quietly set the whole story in motion. Solomon had only just taken the throne. He was young, unproven, and carrying a crown far heavier than his years. He went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, and in the stillness of that night, God came to him in a dream. The moment feels almost impossible to grasp. What would you have said if heaven had stood before you and opened its hand? In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5, God said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." A young king was given what most men spend their lives chasing: one direct invitation from God with no limit attached. Solomon could have asked for overflowing treasure, for decades added to his life, or for every enemy around him to be crushed. He asked for none of it. Instead, he answered with humility. He said, "Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people, and to distinguish between right and wrong." He did not reach first for pleasure, revenge, or safety. He reached for wisdom, and he reached for it because a nation was depending on him. That answer pleased God deeply, so deeply that God gave him far more than he requested. He received wisdom beyond comparison, riches beyond measure, and honor greater than the kings of the earth. It all began because he desired the right thing first. That is what makes this story so piercing. Hold on to this moment. This same man, the one who once asked heaven for discernment, would later kneel before lifeless idols made by human hands. Isn't that the kind of fall that hurts the most? Not when a fool collapses, but when a wise man does. And Solomon's wisdom was not some distant, invisible gift. It revealed itself almost immediately. In a case so tense that all Israel must have held its breath, two women stood before the king. Both claimed to be the mother of the same living child. There were no witnesses, no written record, no proof anyone could touch. Only two broken voices, one infant, and a decision that could not be taken back. In a royal court, where truth was buried beneath grief and accusation, what could even be done? Then Solomon said something so shocking it must have frozen the room. "Bring me a sword. Cut the living child in two, and give half to one and half to the other." It sounded brutal, even unbearable. But Solomon was not revealing cruelty. He was drawing hidden truth into the light. In a single sentence, he forced love and envy to expose themselves. The true mother broke instantly. She cried out, "Give her the baby. Do not kill him." The other woman answered with chilling bitterness, "Neither of us shall have him. Cut him in two." That was all Solomon needed. He pointed to the first woman and declared, "Give the living baby to her. She is his mother." In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 28, Scripture says that when Israel heard the verdict, they stood in awe of the king, because they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. That was Solomon at his height, clear-eyed, fearless, preciso, a man whose mind could cut through deception faster than a blade, could cut flesh. This was the king God had shaped, the king people believed could not be fooled. And yet, that is where the ache of his story begins. Because the most dangerous battles are not always fought on open fields. Sometimes, they rise quietly inside the very person everyone admires. Solomon would not one day lose everything to a foreign army or a stronger throne. He would move toward ruin by degrees, from within. And that may be the most frightening part of all. Picture yourself standing on the hills east of Jerusalem in the year 957 before Christ. The air is cool. The city is still waking. Then the sun begins to rise behind you, and the first light spills over the ridge and crashes into Mount Moriah. Instantly, you have to narrow your eyes. Something on that summit catches the dawn. With such force, it looks like a second sun has risen above Jerusalem. Gold blazes from the height, gold on the walls, gold on the roof, gold hammered, polished, and alive with fire in the morning light, throwing its brilliance across the city below. This was Solomon's temple, and it was never just a religious building. It was the boldest construction the ancient world had yet seen, a project so immense that in modern terms, its cost would reach into the billions. Even now, the scale of it feels unreal. More than 180,000 laborers were involved over 7 years. Solomon dealt directly with Hiram, king of Tyre, to obtain the cedars of Lebanon, wood so prized it was considered the finest in the known world. Imagine those endless caravans moving down from the mountains, loaded with fragrant timber, the scent of cedar traveling through the air long before the beams arrived. Phoenician craftsmen, masters of their trade, shaped the details with such care that even today, people still marvel at the sophistication behind it. What kind of king thinks on that scale? And what kind of nation believes a house worthy of God can actually be built? The stones were just as astonishing. Massive blocks, some as large as small houses, were quarried, cut, and finished before they ever reached the site. By the time they arrived, they were ready to be placed.com. Scripture says the temple was built so that no hammer, no chisel, no iron tool was heard at the site while it was rising. Think about that for a moment. A project of this magnitude, yet the mountain itself was marked by silence. It was as though the structure was not being built in the ordinary way, but assembled piece by piece by unseen hands. The main sanctuary measured about 30 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 15 meters high. Impressive, yes, but size was not what stole people's breath away. It was the inside. From floor to ceiling, the interior was lined with gold. Not here and there, not a few ceremonial details. Everywhere. The eye could hardly rest without meeting the gleam of precious metal. The walls seemed to burn with reflected light. In the inner sanctuary stood giant cherubim, made from olive wood and overlaid with gold, their wings stretching outward until they touched the walls on both sides, guarding the holiest object in Israel's history. At the entrance rose two massive bronze pillars named Yakin and Boaz. Their capitals were adorned with pomegranates and woven chains, symbols that spoke of strength, stability, and enduring covenant. Even silver had become ordinary in Solomon's Jerusalem. 1 Kings chapter 10 verse 27 says, "The king made silver as common as stones." That was not poetry. That was the atmosphere of his reign. Silver lay around the city with so little distinction that it had lost its prestige. Yet for all its splendor, this temple was never meant to glorify human power alone. That is where the story becomes overwhelming. This was the place where the God of Israel chose to set his name, the maker of heaven and earth, the one no sky can contain, looked upon this house and declared that his presence would be there. That is what set Solomon's temple apart from every palace, tomb, and pyramid raised by kings who wanted to immortalize themselves. This house was not built for a man to dwell in. It was built for God. Can you feel the difference? One building says, "Look what humanity can do." This one said, "Let the Holy One come near." To keep such a place functioning, Solomon established an order so precise it rivaled the greatest systems in the ancient world. 24 divisions of priests served in rotation, week after week, so the sacred ministry never ceased. Day and night incense rose from the golden altar. Day and night, the lampstand was tended and replenished with the purest olive oil. Bakers worked in appointed chambers, preparing the bread of the presence. 12 fresh loaves set in order on a golden table, every Sabbath according to a sacred pattern, guarded with reverence. Perfumers blended the holy incense by the formula God had given, a fragrance so restricted that anyone who copied it for personal use would be cut off from the people. Beneath all the visible beauty, the temple moved like a living body. Every task had its place. Every person had a role. Every rhythm pointed upward. There is a lesson hidden there that still speaks now. Splendor without order collapses, but beauty joined to obedience carries weight. Then came the day of dedication, and all Israel was summoned, elders, tribal leaders, priests, and people gathered as one nation before the house that had taken years to complete. The Ark of the Covenant was brought up from the city of David and carried into the Holy of Holies, the innermost chamber, a perfect cube measuring 10 meters on every side. This was the most sacred space in the nation, so holy that only the high priest could enter, and only once each year on the Day of Atonement. Everything led to that room. Everything revolved around the presence of God. Then the sacrifices began. The numbers are staggering. 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep. It was far beyond a private act of devotion. It was the whole nation pouring itself out before the Lord. The smoke rose so heavily it could be seen from the surrounding hills. The bronze altar itself could not contain the offerings, so Solomon consecrated the middle of the courtyard as additional holy ground for the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, and the fat of the peace offerings. The entire city carried the scent of fire, worship, and surrender. This was more than ceremony. It was a public declaration that Israel belonged to God. In an age like ours, where people often want blessing without surrender, that scene lands with unusual force. The celebration lasted 14 days. People came from the farthest reaches of the kingdom, from Lebo Hamath in the north, all the way to the Brook of Egypt in the south. And when Solomon finally sent them home, Scripture says they departed joyful and glad in heart for all the good the Lord had shown. But before that dismissal, Solomon stood before the altar and prayed one of the most extraordinary prayers in all Scripture. He openly confessed that even the highest heaven could not contain God, much less a house made by human hands. Still, he pleaded that God would hear when his people prayed toward this place, that he would forgive them when they sinned, heal them when they were broken, and restore them when they turned back to him. Isn't that the tension at the center of the temple? A God too vast to be contained, yet merciful enough to draw near. And then came the moment no one there could have forgotten. 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 10 says that when the priests came out of the holy place, the glory of the Lord filled the temple. A cloud descended so densely, so heavily charged with divine presence, that the priest could not remain standing to minister. They were overwhelmed. God had accepted the offering. God had taken possession of the house built for his name. The temple was no longer merely magnificent. It was inhabited, but even on that day of glory, a shadow stood at the edge of the light. God did not leave Solomon with wonder alone. He gave him a condition, and it was severe. If Solomon or his descendants turned away, if they abandoned the commandments and gave themselves to other gods, then the Lord said he would cut Israel off from the land he had given them. And this very temple, the house he had consecrated for his name, he would cast out of his sight. It would become a ruin, a byword, a shock to passing nations. People would look at its destruction and whisper in disbelief, asking why the Lord had done such a thing to this land and to this house. That warning hung over the most beautiful building on earth from the very day God's glory filled it. Solomon heard it clearly. The gold was real. The fire was real. The presence was real. But so was the warning. And sometimes the most terrifying moment in a story is not when judgment falls, but when heaven speaks plainly and the man at the center hears every word. To understand what Solomon built, you first have to understand what Solomon possessed. The figures recorded in 1 Kings chapter 10 almost sound invented, as though they belong in legend rather than history. Yet, Scripture presents them with complete seriousness. Year after year, 666 talents of gold entered Solomon's treasury. In modern terms, that would be around $3 billion annually, and that was only the beginning. It did not include the profits from merchants, the income from traders, or the tribute brought by subject kings and regional governors. Wealth did not trickle into Jerusalem. It surged there, constant and unstoppable, like a river finding its lowest ground. Everything around Solomon reflected that scale. His throne was crafted from ivory and then covered in pure gold. 6 steps rose toward it, and beside those steps stood golden lions, 1 on each side, 12 in all. It was a display so extravagant that Scripture says nothing like it had ever been made in any other kingdom. Even the drinking vessels in his palace were made of gold. Not some of them, all of them. Silver was not treated as treasure in Solomon's court. It was too ordinary, too common, too far beneath the level at which he lived. And then there was the daily provision for his household, which almost feels impossible to imagine. 30 measures of fine flour, 60 measures of meal, 10 fattened cattle, 20 pasture-fed cattle, 100 sheep, along with deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fattened birds every single day. This was not a banquet held for some rare occasion. This was the ordinary rhythm of Solomon's table. Morning, midday, and evening. A royal household so enormous, it functioned like a kingdom within the kingdom had to be supplied. Can you picture the movement of that court? Servants rushing, kitchens blazing, officials coming and going, food prepared on a scale. Most people in the ancient world would never witness even once in their lifetime. Then came the Queen of Sheba, and her arrival says almost as much about Solomon as his treasure did. She traveled roughly 1,400 miles from the southern reaches of Arabia because the reports about him had become too great to ignore. She had heard the stories, but she did not believe them fully. Not yet. So she came with spices, with gold, with precious stones, and with questions sharp enough to test the mind of a king. She came to examine him for herself. Was he truly that wise? Was his kingdom truly that glorious? Or had the world exaggerated him, the way people still exaggerate power and success today? Solomon answered every question she brought. Nothing was hidden from him. Nothing left him cornered. Yet strangely, it was not his answers alone that undid her. It was everything around him. The order of his court, the abundance on his table, the way his officials were arranged, the clothing of his servants, the disciplined movement of the household, the precision, the dignity, the sheer atmosphere of controlled magnificence. And then there were the burnt offerings he presented at the temple, acts of worship rising in the middle of all that splendor, as if to say that even his greatness was still meant to bow before God. 1 Kings chapter 10 verse 5 says that when she saw it all, there was no more breath in her. She was not merely impressed. She was shaken by the reality of it. The sight overwhelmed her physically. Then she said to Solomon, "The half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the report I heard." Think about the weight of that confession. One of the wealthiest and most powerful queens in the ancient world arrived expecting exaggeration and left admitting that the truth was greater than the rumor. Even she had underestimated Solomon. But here is the detail almost everyone misses. Long before Solomon ever sat on a throne, God had already written a law for the kings of Israel. In Deuteronomy chapter 17, 3 warnings were laid down with unmistakable clarity. The king must not multiply horses. The king must not multiply wives. The king must not multiply gold and silver. 3 commands, 3 lines that were meant to protect a ruler from the very temptations power would place at his feet, and Solomon broke every one of them. The horses came from Egypt, the gold came from every direction, and the wives reached a number that still stuns the mind. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 3 states it with chilling precision: 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, 1,000 women. Scripture does not frame this as romance. It frames it as power. These were not simply relationships. They were alliances dressed in silk. When Solomon married Pharaoh's daughter, he was not merely taking a wife. He was securing peace with Egypt, the most feared military power in the ancient world. When he married Moabite princesses, he strengthened ties with Moab. Sidonian women tied him to the Phoenician coast. Ammonite women helped quiet the eastern frontier. Hittite marriages strengthened the north. In effect, Solomon extended influence across the region without launching campaigns the way other kings did. Where others sent chariots, he sent wedding processions. Where others signed peace with blood, he sealed it with vows. Every marriage became a political instrument, a treaty wrapped in fragrance and ceremony. Inside the palace, that system became something enormous. The harem was not simply a private wing of royal life. It functioned like a city hidden inside the larger city. The royal wives occupied luxurious pavilions in the upper levels, overlooking gardens filled with pomegranate trees, trailing vines, and flowering shrubs fed by channels of running water. The concubines lived in the lower quarters, still surrounded by splendor beyond what most people could imagine. Yet arranged according to rank and favor, every woman had attendants. Every woman had her own apartments. Every woman carried not just beauty, but political weight. Some maintained correspondence with their homelands. Some represented interests far beyond the palace walls. An entire machinery existed to keep this world running. Stewards oversaw provisions. Guards watched the corridors day and night. Physicians and midwives remained on call. Perfumers blended oils and fragrances for different women, different ceremonies, different moods. Scribes kept exact records, noting each woman's origin, the dowry that accompanied her, the gifts she received, the children she bore, and her position within the hierarchy. This was not domestic life in any ordinary sense. It was administration. It was diplomacy. It was control. Even the rituals leading to a single night with the king were elaborate. A senior messenger would announce the chosen woman at dawn, and preparation would continue for the rest of the day. She would bathe in pools scented with myrrh, aloe, and cinnamon. Her skin would be treated with oils and costly mixtures. Her garments would be selected with extraordinary care, fabrics dyed in rare colors, jewels chosen not only for beauty, but for what they suggested about status, fertility, mystery, or favor. The royal chamber itself would be prepared with censers burning fragrance into the air, petals scattered across the floor, and music shaped to stir tenderness, longing, and awe. Can you imagine the tension inside those walls? To be chosen was an honor. To remain forgotten was its own kind of defeat. Nothing in that world was left unregulated. No wife could move into another section without permission. Communication between cultural groups was carefully supervised by senior women who acted as intermediaries. Every measure was designed to reduce rumors, weaken conspiracies, and prevent rival factions from gaining too much influence over the king. Yet even with all that structure, rivalry could not be eliminated. It only became more refined. The competition inside those chambers was subtle, intelligent, and relentless. Some women stood out by engaging Solomon's mind, drawing him into discussions of government, philosophy, or affairs of state. Others cultivated artistic gifts, composing poetry, designing exclusive perfumes, or mastering dances and ceremonial customs from their native lands. Networks formed quietly between women from different nations. Influence moved through corridors long before it appeared in public decisions, and a single word spoken in the right moment by a favored wife, perhaps in the hush of an intimate conversation, could reroute trade, lift an ambassador into favor, or reshape the tone of a treaty. This was not a household in the ordinary sense. It was an empire of influence sealed behind perfumed walls, and, for a time, it seemed to work flawlessly. But each of those 1,000 women carried something into Solomon's world that he did not fully account for: the gods of their homelands. Pharaoh's daughter kept the religious memory of Egypt near her. Sidonian women burned incense to Ashtoreth. Moabite women honored Chemosh, a god tied to rituals that would have been abhorrent to any faithful worshiper of the Lord. Ammonite women served Molech, a name that in the ancient world became bound to the darkest forms of worship. At first, Solomon appears to have tolerated these practices as political courtesy: a private shrine here, a discreet altar there, small accommodations perhaps, to preserve peace inside a palace built on negotiation. But compromise rarely stays small. The private spaces grew larger. The hidden altars became harder to hide. What began as tolerated ritual slowly moved into public view, until pagan worship could be seen within sight of the very temple raised to the living God. Then, 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 4, delivers its judgment in a sentence as simple as it is devastating. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David, his father, had been. That is what makes Solomon's fall so unbearable. The wisest man who ever lived was not destroyed by invasion, not by assassination, not by rebellion. He was undone in the realm he thought he had mastered. He was bent, slowly and fatally, by the loves he chose to keep too close. And then came the act that turned decline into scandal. He built a high place for Chemosh on the hill east of Jerusalem. Pause on that image. On one hill stood the temple of the Lord, covered in gold, filled with sacred fire, marked by the glory of God. Across from it, within sight of it, Solomon raised an altar to a foreign god. The very man who built a house for the name of the Lord built another space for what opposed him, and placed both before the eyes of the nation. What must faithful Israelites have thought when they looked across those hills? What happens to a kingdom when its king begins honoring what God has condemned? And the deepest wound is this: Solomon did not fall because he lacked understanding. He fell while knowing exactly what he was doing. He had already written about this danger himself. In Proverbs chapter 7, verse 25, words attributed to Solomon warn: "Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths." He understood seduction. He described its pull with startling precision. He named its traps. He traced its consequences. Then he stepped into the snare he had warned others to avoid. The man who spoke wisdom became one of wisdom's most sobering warnings. There is another side to Solomon's legacy, one that does not come from the pages of Scripture and must be handled with honesty. Centuries after Solomon died, ancient writers began telling a story so strange and so powerful that it shaped the way whole civilizations remembered his name. This is not the Bible. This is legend. Yet even the legend carries a warning of its own. One of the most famous of these writings is the Testament of Solomon, a text usually dated somewhere between the 1st and 5th centuries after Christ. In that tradition, Solomon is said to have received a ring from the archangel Michael. The ring bore the sacred name of God, and through it, Solomon was believed to have authority over demons. The story says he summoned them, questioned them, and forced them to reveal their names, their powers, and the weaknesses by which they could be restrained. Imagine how shocking that image would have been. The king of Israel, not merely ruling men, but commanding spirits. According to the legend, Solomon used those spirits to help build the temple itself. They moved stones too massive for ordinary workers to carry. They carved details no human craftsman could have achieved with such speed or precision. The tale goes even further, claiming that Solomon held dominion over ranks of spiritual beings and used them not only as laborers, but also as messengers and sources of hidden knowledge about the world itself. It is a breathtaking story, but the deeper question is not whether the legend is dramatic. The deeper question is why later generations found it believable at all. Why did Solomon, a king chosen by God, become linked in people's imagination with sorcery, secret power, and the command of dark forces? Why would later ages look at the man who built the temple and wonder whether he had crossed into forbidden territory? Because by the end of his life, that possibility no longer sounded absurd. Solomon had moved so deeply into the world of foreign religions, pagan rituals, and the spiritual customs of his wives that the line between holy wisdom and corrupted knowledge no longer looked clear. Later generations stared at the scale of what he built, the almost supernatural brilliance of his mind, and the darkness that marked his final years, and they struggled to know how to classify him. Was he a servant of God who fell terribly? Or had he become something more dangerous, a man who stepped across a line and never found his way back? That is why the legend matters. Even though it is not scripture, it acts like a mirror. It shows how people remember a gifted man once he begins to treat divine favor as personal possession. And that may be one of the oldest temptations in history. A person receives a gift from God, then slowly begins to live as though the gift belongs to them, as though wisdom is self-generated, as though power can be handled without reverence. That is when glory starts turning into ruin. 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 9, states the truth with terrifying simplicity. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Let that settle in. This was not a man acting in spiritual ignorance. This was not someone who had only heard stories from a distance. God had personally appeared to Solomon on 2 separate occasions. He had spoken to him. He had blessed him. He had entrusted him with wisdom, wealth, and the temple itself. And still, Solomon turned away. That makes the judgment even heavier. God said, "Since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates." There is no softness in those words, no ambiguity. The sentence was clear. The kingdom Solomon had strengthened, adorned, and expanded would not remain whole under his house. And yet, even there, mercy still appeared. God did not execute that judgment in Solomon's lifetime, and he did not do that because Solomon deserved leniency. He did it for David's sake. He also promised that one tribe would remain with Solomon's son for the sake of Jerusalem, the city God had chosen. That is one of the most sobering patterns in all Scripture. Judgment can be real, and mercy can still be present inside it. Solomon would not escape the consequences of his divided heart, but he would see that even God's wrath was not stripped of covenant memory. So, the legend of the ring stands outside the Bible, but the fear behind it touches something true when a man once marked by divine wisdom drifts far enough into compromise. Later generations no longer know whether to remember him with awe or with suspicion. And that is part of what makes Solomon's story so haunting. His name became great enough to inspire legends, but his fall became dark enough to make those legends believable. The consequences did not wait. They came fast. Enemies who had stayed quiet for years suddenly began to move. Hadad the Edomite, who had fled to Egypt back in David's time, returned and became a threat along Israel's southern border. In the north, Rezin of Damascus rose to power in Syria and turned into a constant adversary. But the deepest wound did not come from a foreign king. It came from inside Solomon's own house of power. Jeroboam, one of Solomon's officials, received a word from the prophet Ahijah that God would hand him 10 of the 12 tribes. Imagine hearing that while the king was still alive, while the palace still stood in all its splendor, the fracture had already begun. Even before the nation fully saw the crack, and beneath it all, the cost of Solomon's lifestyle was becoming unbearable. 1,000 royal households did not sustain themselves. Every day demanded more food, more imported cloth, more servants, more security, more maintenance for palaces, shrines, gardens, and the machinery of luxury. What had once looked like unstoppable abundance was now becoming a burden the kingdom could feel in its bones. The treasury that had overflowed under Solomon's glory began to strain under Solomon's excess. Taxes rose. Forced labor fell on the people, the same tribes that had once stood in awe of his wisdom began to speak in lower, harder tones about what his reign was costing them. Then Solomon died. His son Rehoboam inherited the throne and immediately walked into a crisis that had been building for years. The people sent Jeroboam as their spokesman to beg for relief from the heavy taxes and forced labor Solomon had imposed. This was the moment that could have changed everything. The older counselors, men who had served Solomon and understood the weight people were carrying, urged Rehoboam toward mercy. "Lighten the burden," they said, "and the people will serve you faithfully." It was wise counsel, humble counsel, the kind of counsel that can save a nation. But Rehoboam rejected it. Instead, he turned to the younger men who had grown up with him in the palace. Men raised among polished luxury, men who had known gold before they knew hardship, men who understood privilege better than pain. Their advice was pure arrogance, and Rehoboam delivered it exactly as they gave it. He told the people, "My father laid on you a heavy yoke. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions." That was not merely a political mistake. It was the sound of a kingdom tearing in real time. The break came at once. 10 tribes followed Jeroboam and formed the northern kingdom. Only Judah and Benjamin remained with Rehoboam in the south, and just like that, the united kingdom of Israel was ripped in two permanently. The kingdom that had once dazzled the ancient world, the kingdom whose wealth and wisdom had left the Queen of Sheba breathless, would never be whole again. Everything Solomon had built outwardly began collapsing inwardly. The structure still stood, but the unity was gone. The temple still shone with gold, but the deeper glory had already departed from the man who built it. Then, within 5 years, the humiliation became visible. Pharaoh Shishak of Egypt invaded Jerusalem and stripped the temple of its treasures. The gold shields Solomon had made were carried off to Egypt. Rehoboam replaced them with bronze, where there had once been gold. That single image says more than a chapter of explanation. The next generation was left imitating the splendor it no longer possessed. The shine remained, but the substance was gone. And that is what Solomon's fall ultimately cost his children. At the twilight of his life, stripped of all pretenses and writing with the ruthless honesty that only comes when there is absolutely nothing left to protect, King Solomon stared into the abyss of his own soul. It is a chilling image. The great king, sitting alone in a darkened, silent chamber of his massive palace, his hands trembling as he dips his quill in ink to pen the haunting lines of the biblical book of Ecclesiastes. Jewish tradition whispers that these were the final, agonizing words of a broken ruler, written only after his entire glorious kingdom had begun to fracture and fall apart. Imagine having everything you could ever dream of, only to realize it was your undoing. In the second chapter of this raw final testament, in verses 10 and 11, Solomon exposes his deepest secrets to the world. He writes that he denied his eyes nothing they desired and refused his heart no pleasure. His heart took a fleeting delight in all his labor, and for a moment he believed this was the reward for all his agonizing toil. But then the illusion shattered. Does it shock you that a man who had the power to command anything on earth could still feel entirely empty? When Solomon surveyed all that his hands had done and the monumental achievements he had toiled to grasp, his verdict was devastating. Everything was meaningless, a mere chasing after the wind. Absolutely nothing was gained under the sun. Let that sink in. These are not the detached musings of a monk who gave up the world and called it empty from a safe, comfortable distance. This is the confession of a man who literally consumed the world, every luxury, every exotic treasure, every physical pleasure, every achievement the human experience could possibly offer. He took it, he held it tightly, and yet it turned to suffocating smoke right in his hands. Have you ever fought so hard for something only to feel a profound sense of disappointment the moment it was finally yours? Solomon stands as the only figure in human history who can speak on this with absolute, terrifying authority, because he is the only man who truly had it all. If someone struggling to pay their bills claims that money cannot buy happiness, it is easy to dismiss them. They have never actually had the chance to test that theory. If a lonely person tells you that relationships are not the answer to life's voids, you can choose to ignore them. They have never been adored by 1,000 women. But when the richest, wisest, most powerful monarch to ever draw breath declares that all of it is a cruel illusion, how can anyone argue with him? He ran the ultimate experiment on human desire, and the result was catastrophic. What if the things you are sacrificing your peace for right now are the very things that will hollow you out? Here lies the universal truth that Solomon discovered, a truth that most people will spend their entire lives desperately refusing to accept. The human soul was never designed to be filled by created things. It cannot be satisfied by numbers in a bank account, by massive career success, by the touch of another person, by the intoxication of fame, or even by the pursuit of endless knowledge. The soul has a distinct supernatural shape, and nothing found on this earth can ever fit into its contours. You can pour mountains of gold into it, flood it with romantic love, or pack it with global recognition and absolute power. Yet, it will still echo with a haunting emptiness. Why? Because the shape of the soul is the shape of God, and only the Creator can fit into that divine mold. That is not a cheap religious cliche. It is the scientific conclusion of the most thorough, expensive experiment ever conducted on human desire. Solomon did not just read about life in a book. He lived every single extreme version of it. Historical accounts from the first book of Kings detail how his palace took 13 years to build, overshadowing even the temple. He tried intellectual wisdom, and it only left him restless and burdened. He tried laughter, madness, and intense pleasure, but they evaporated like mist. By morning, he threw himself into monumental engineering projects, building palaces, planting sprawling vineyards, designing exotic gardens, and constructing massive pools of water engineered to perfection. These achievements gave him a fleeting sense of pride for a season, but they left him with nothing but dust forever. He accumulated servants, massive herds of livestock, and mountains of silver and gold, brought by trading ships from distant lands like Ophir. He surrounded himself with women, beyond counting 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, turning his palace into a crowded labyrinth of foreign cultures and competing loyalties. After exhausting every single possibility that life under the sun could offer, his final, unanimous verdict was a heavy, crushing word: vanity. All of it was vanity. And this is the exact part of the story that should terrify you to your very core. Solomon did not lose his way because he was weak. He lost his way because he was incredibly strong. If you were handed his level of brilliance, would you have survived it, or would you have fallen even faster? His extraordinary gifts became his maximum security prison. His unimaginable wealth became his ultimate distraction. Worst of all, his supernatural wisdom gave him the toxic ability to justify every single compromise he made. The smarter you are, the better you become at convincing yourself that a dangerous wrong path is actually completely reasonable. Solomon could out-argue anyone in the world, including his own conscience, while the great temple of Jerusalem was covered in pure gold. Solomon's heart was secretly covered in dark compromise. His magnificent ivory throne was guarded by 12 majestic golden lions. But the king who sat upon it had bent his knees in devotion to gods made of cold, lifeless stone, building altars to Chemosh and Molech on the hill east of Jerusalem. He had the literal, terrifying presence of God resting in his temple, but he suffered from a catastrophic absence of God in his own soul. He could solve any complex geopolitical problem in the entire kingdom, except for the raging spiritual war inside his own chest. At the very end of his journey, after all the gold had lost its luster, after the 1,000 women had grown quiet, and after all the power and wisdom had proved themselves to be utterly hollow, Solomon wrote one final, definitive sentence. In the 12th chapter of Ecclesiastes, at the 13th verse, he delivers his ultimate conclusion: now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter: fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. That is all that remains. After everything, after the architectural marvel of the temple, the glory of the throne, the ocean of wealth, and the arms of 1,000 wives, the wisest man who ever lived reduced the entirety of human existence into one single line: to fear God and keep his commandments is the whole duty of man, not a mere part of it, not just a casual weekend obligation, but the absolute whole of it. Everything else is just chasing the wind. Solomon successfully built the temple, but he tragically lost his own heart. And in losing his heart, he proved something that your generation needs to hear today more than ever. You were not made for more. You were made for God. Until you deeply understand that, nothing you build, nothing you earn, nothing you conquer, and no one you desperately hold on to will ever be enough. The truth is, we are all running Solomon's experiment right now on a much smaller scale. We tell ourselves the exact same lies he believed. We whisper, if I can just get that promotion, if I can just close that multi-million-dollar deal, if I can just find that perfect person, if I can just hit that specific net worth in my account, then I will finally be satisfied. Then I can finally rest. Then I will be truly happy. But remember this, Solomon reached every single number. He closed every single deal. He held every single person. And yet, he sat in the richest palace on earth, surrounded by unimaginable luxury, and wrote the word meaningless. So, look closely at your own life and be completely honest, not with the world, but within the quiet spaces of your own mind. What is the one thing you are chasing with all your energy right now that you have convinced yourself will finally make you happy? And what if you are completely wrong about it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about the illusions we chase, because I read every single one. If this story shed light on a truth you had never realized before, pass it along to someone who desperately needs this wake-up call. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.